Hi, Professor.
Hi.
Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation about post-pandemic situation in this country in regards to education. So to our viewers, Professor Masiwo Lumala is a lecturer at Moi University. He is a gender communication and development expert. He is at SDGs champions, and he strongly speaks about education, the quality of education in this country. Not to forget that he's a chair of African Tourism Research and Development Committee, and is well versed with both local and international education now that he has served in universities both locally and abroad. Karibu sana, Professor.
Asante sana. It's nice to be here, and thanks for giving me a chance to be able to share my thoughts with you, and generally to be able to reflect on the issues affecting education in our country.
And just to get to the key aspect that you're trying to talk about in this webinar, I just want to understand, do you think it was really the right time to open schools?
Okay, I think you are asking that in the context of COVID-19.
Yes, sorry.
And during last year, when the situation was very bad, of course, the country closed schools, and the consequences are there for all of us to see. That from March up to around September, no school was open. And later on, when they tried to reopen in September for the Form 4s and the Grade 4 children, we could, and Standard 8 as well, there is a feeling that that was a nice way of experimenting whether schools could reopen or not. And so, looking at the rate of COVID in the country and all that, we have not seen a major spike. So probably, yes, this was the right time, but was it done right? My opinion would be no. And maybe I'll explain that in a subsequent question.
Great. So yes, you're right. There are so many concerns whether it was really the right time to open schools, and given that you've not yet gotten the numbers that get to maybe inform us that it was not the right thing, but then there's a bit of an argument against the numbers that we are getting. Like yesterday in the news, it was reported that there's no COVID case. And there's another school of thought that feels like probably we are not getting the right information in terms of the
Yes.
numbers that are reported. What can you
Yes.
say about that?
Well, it goes back to the Tanzanian story. Sometimes back, you remember that Tanzania said they did not have any case of COVID, but it was because they were undergoing an election year and the president really wanted to ensure he can campaign and get back to office. Now that he's in office, he's able to declare. One challenge that many African countries, Kenya included, face is that we are not able to test 100%. Okay? But I think Kenya has taken some very significant steps that could be very useful. I could not even see them in the US. For example, in this town in Eldoret, you don't enter in a mall without being able to wash your hands, to sanitize. They have taken steps in schools, but the truth be said, that many people do not have masks, and many people do not seem to even afford to have the masks. So, in the event that we have any cases on, probably they are not being captured because there's no major testing, and then we are not doing tracing. I do not think that when someone dies somewhere and they are declared to have died of COVID, that the government is taking sufficient steps towards ensuring that we are able to trace the people who attended the funeral and all that. And even look at the public rallies. The politicians are all over the place. And they are definitely wary, not bothering about social distance.
You're right.
You might wear masks, but I don't think that really is a key solution to the problem.
Sure.
Yeah, the
Right.
crowding so much. Even in churches, I think we have that crowd, and that
Yes.
really worries me.
Yeah, there's quite a very gap there that we need to handle as public policy analysts, so
Yeah,
that
sorry.
we can be able to, to really fetch the issues from the bottom and
Yeah.
address such a huge gap. So now we know that the government has put forward some mitigation measures. Do you feel like those were replicated from other countries? Do they fit in a Kenyan context? Now that you're coming from the US, do you feel like what we are doing here is what we're supposed to be doing, or we'll have done it better?
Um, you know, it is difficult to say whether we are copy pasting from somewhere else. The reason being that as we speak, COVID is not a Kenyan thing, it's an international thing, it's a global problem. So if something has worked somewhere else, you do not have to invent the wheel. You're likely to replicate that and see whether it works for you. So yes, if the government is taking any measures, remember that the whole idea of saying let's social distance or isolate and wear masks and use the sanitizers. These are recommendations of the World Health Organization, and they are replicated in all the countries wherever COVID has been detected. So I do not think that we can blame it on the country and say we are copying everywhere. However, I think we need to have our own approach to issues. Take, for example, you are reopening schools. Why not? Why will the Ministry of Education presume that these children are like machines or spoons you can just move from one place to another place and then you stop there? You are children have stayed at home for a year. They should have been in the next class. Form 4 should have done exams. Standard 8 should be joining Form 1. But now they are going back to school at the same level. They needed a bit of counseling, for example.
Yes.
All it needed was to prepare them psychologically and say the first 1 week of school there's no learning. Let's have debates about how has COVID affected. Some of them have lost their parents. Some of them are pregnant as we speak. Some of them have married. If it's boys, they have left wives at home. They have not had support from parents because remember, most parents work. So you leave a child in Nairobi in the morning, you go to work, you come back, you leave at 5 you are AM, you are coming back at 9 p.m. You don't know what your daughter has gone through. You don't know what your son has gone through. So I feel like the Ministry of Education was so presumptuous in assuming that these students will just reach school and behave normally. As the Minister of Health will say, we are acting abnormally and we expect the children to behave normally. It doesn't work like that.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're very much
Yeah.
right. All right. So, of course, there's a whole element of the time that has been lost by the learners for a whole
Yes.
year being away from school.
Yeah.
So, recovering the lost time for the learners during the pandemic will need really quite handful efforts from different players in education sector. So, in your opinion, what needs to be done to achieve this?
One is that we are a very highly examination oriented country. And rightly so, because we have too many students chasing after very few chances. So we know that these students in Form 4 especially and Standard 8 have to sit the exams in March. I do not think we have given them any advantage. The results show very clearly that the school averages in different counties, like in the papers today, they show Nairobi is leading. But why is Nairobi leading? Because most parents in Nairobi are affluent. Most of them can use online teaching resources, and some of those children actually attended online classes. I don't think majority of rural schools ever had a chance to use that. In fact, I ran a school in Kitale, and my teachers in the first place are not computer literate. So I do not think they could even have been able to mount any online teaching if it came to it. So these children are already disadvantaged. Then you are not giving them sufficient time to catch up from where they stopped. We are assuming that term one was completed, which was never. We are assuming that when these children reported in school in September, they were able to catch up. Some of them did not even show up in school. Some of them are having still a lot of challenges as to whether they want to go back to school or not. And so there is not enough time. There's a lot of pressure on the teachers. So the idea here is, how shall these particular exams be used to measure students' abilities for their next level, whether you are going to the university for the Form 4s or Form 1? I do not think that the exams will be a true reflection of their ability, because they have not been adequate. And no matter what happens, I don't think, even if we put pressure on the teachers, unless the exams are changed to reflect the current realities, if the exams that have been set are a reflection of what they anticipated in a normal curriculum, normal teaching, and normal revision, I don't think these students are going to perform well.
You're right. You're very right. And, government has to implement a framework through which you can be able to recover and really revitalize education for for this particular generation that has lost study time during the pandemic. And yeah, so really the pandemic has really taught us that the disaster preparedness, especially in schools, is zero, if not close to zero. So what are some of these lessons that you think we've learned in regards to disaster preparedness in the education sector?
The problem is, I can tell you, we never learn. If the natural disasters we experience year in, year out are anything to go by as a country, I don't think we will learn much. Other countries may learn, but I don't think we are going to. One, I was speaking to the Vice Chancellor, for example, of Moi University, and saying, what can we leverage from COVID-19 in a post-COVID dispensation? And you don't see a university that is ready to take measures, aware that, for example, online teaching has become a norm. You know, we still have a situation where there is no networking at the university level. Most lecturers don't have computers in their offices. We have to rely on our personal PCs or laptops. And then you are having a scenario where the numbers, for example, are we able to cope with large numbers in a small place? Are we ready for, if there was another pandemic today, can we be able to mount normal teaching and learning to go on even when the students are at home? No. First, you have students who don't even arrive with a laptop in the university. They don't have one. Rightly so, because of the poverty that we experience. Secondly, we have lecturers who are not ICT compliant. And we will still wish to have the hard copies for everything that we are doing. Our examination rules are still the kind where you have the green booklets and yellow booklets going around in the exam. In other countries such as US, Europe, students sit exams online. Assignments are done online. Even in normal times, it's not because of COVID. It is a normal thing that lecturers set exams online and students take the exams online. We are still in the hard copy era.
Yes.
So it is going to take a bit of time, for example, to change until we are able to change the university regulations. It comes out. Then the other thing that you might want to reflect on is, let's look at the primary school. Why did the 844 system fail? The 844 system set out, the very first 844 system had 10 subjects. Students were able to learn art and craft, music, and I could remember small huts being built in the school villages and all that. Children could make calabash from wood. So they were being engaged. But within a short time, that was reduced until we were left with 5 subjects: English, mathematics, GHC, or SST, and all that. So what assures us, just like people are talking about BBI, what is the surety we have that if you introduce a competence-based curriculum, we're going to get it right. Most schools don't have the facilities. Most teachers, like you go to a school and the teacher has written in the scheme of work that they are going to use realia, or they are going to use portfolio as an assessment. There's no realia, there's no portfolio they know. They don't even know what portfolio is. So we are rushing it, and I can assure you we will still get it wrong.
Okay.
9 years from now, 10 years, come back and interview me, and let's talk about CBC and see whether it's achieving the intentions. Because you are
Right.
talking about 13 subjects. 844 had 10 in primary. We reduced them to 5. Yeah.
Yes, so I'm one of the beneficiaries who did 5, and we thought it's such a good thing. Um, and until I realized when I went to the secondary school that, even the basic art skills I lack compared
Yeah.
to our successors. So you're very right. We might need to rethink our curriculum. So maybe getting to ask you the last question. Do you think there's a conversation around establishing education recovery funds? We really we like
The
having
conversation around what?
around establishing education recovery funds.
Right.
I know this stems from, mostly in our country, we really like having the conversations, but the implementation, it's always
It's a
quite,
problem.
yes, yes. So do you think that we should really set that aside, given the priorities we have as a country today?
No, I don't think there's a problem in having a recovery fund. The problem is, like you say, accountability. I I I have a problem where, as a professor, for example, I'm allocated a PhD student. Take you, Judith. Assume I was your assessor, your supervisor. You are paid fees. The provision is such that on completion of your studies, the supervisor is paid, for example, say 100,000. Okay, you graduate, but now when the supervisor puts in a claim for the 100,000, the money is not there. And before you graduate, they ensure you have paid all the fees. Where has the money gone? Why don't we keep reallocating resources meant for Jews to buying meat, or resources meant for meat to buy chicken? So
You're
our
right.
biggest problem is accountability. Our biggest problem is lack of transparency. Our biggest problem is leaders who feel like they have power to reallocate funds the way they want. So it's like bursaries. You go to the constituencies and the national government CDF thing. It gives you as child 5,000 shillings of fees. The fees in that school is 55,000. What will 5,000 do? Why don't you? And you are spreading the 5,000 to say about 10 children. Supposing you just gave 50,000 to one child and ensure that this child completes Form 1 and then goes to Form 2. Why? So it's not the idea that is bad. The problem is, how do you execute this idea? How do you ensure that when you are going you have the money now in, that actually the money does what is meant to do, but efficiently and effectively? It's not enough to think about just having money.
You're
It's
right.
about executing, using this money to benefit the intended personnel
Purposes.
or
Yes, yes,
persons.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, you're very right. So just to maybe throw you one last question in regards to the topic that you are talking about, COVID-19 and
Yeah.
preparedness. Do you think, what are some of your lessons that we've learned in regards to really preparedness? Because COVID really caught us flat-footed, and we are not, now we know that anything can happen at any particular time of our lives and might find us flat-footed again. Do you think what are some of the lessons in your opinion that you've learned?
Well, if you ask me, the first lesson you learn is that what is impossible is possible. So you never assume that certain things cannot happen. You never imagine that at one point flights will be grounded. And then airplanes came grounded, we stopped running after them, and life just changed. In fact, when you think about prisoners, the world became a huge open prison,
Yes.
and we were all locked down and all that. But the other important lesson is that people should be prepared in terms of uh, expecting, in terms of how to manage and mitigate the disaster or such pandemics like the COVID-19. We need to be able to anticipate and to have plans in place. Uh, a key thing that you will take away from this pandemic, I think, is the very idea that it also pays to follow rules. You know, we have scenarios where countries that put in place measures and people could obey the rules and stick to the rules, they manage to control it for some time. But of course, in some situations, it becomes very difficult. And then we need to address the SDGs. If you ask me, I know you know I love sustainable development goals. We have to fight poverty. The challenges we are going through today are mainly as a result of poverty, I think. That we are unable to even provide basics to our people. That our people are not able to even be able to look after their children when they were at home. Unataka mzazi alishe mtoto and at the same time alipe fees, and these fellows can't afford. So let's try to ensure we address poverty. Let us try to ensure that we set our goals right and we work towards ensuring that we have a more equitable society than what we have now, where people in Nairobi are better off than people in Lodwar. I would like to have a scenario where our hospitals are improved, so we do not rush. That you hear Siaya has only 10 hospital beds or 10 ICU beds, and that's when the pandemic has struck. So how ready are we in terms of basic facilities? And should we be waiting for a problem to happen before we take measures? Or should we be able to proactively continue to invest towards ensuring the wellness of our people?
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so thank you very much, Professor, for contributing to this discussion, very important discussion that we're having, and we really appreciate your time. Asante sana.
Karibu, and I look forward to having more conversations with you.
Thank you.